Logan's great-grandma, her name is Paulina Guckert. She was born in Romania in 1894, and her family decided to come to Canada because her uncle was already in Canada. So they left Romania from Scotland and took a ship, SS Gellert. It arrived in 1904 in November in the United States at Ellis Island. They had to stay in Ellis Island for 11 days to make sure that they were not sick. So they were in quarantine for 11 days, and then they came on a train all the way through the United States to Canada, came through Winnipeg, and then through to Saskatchewan to Weyburn. In Weyburn, they got a Dominion land grant. The land there was terrible. It had no water near them. It was all rocks. And because my grandma-grandpa, or great-grandma-grandpa, didn't speak any English, they had to pay somebody to try and translate, because they had to write a letter to the government to tell them that the land was not very good. Their first impression of coming to Canada wasn't very good because the land was terrible. They were promised it would be this wonderful, great farmland that they could be just like they were back home, and instead it was just rocks with no water. For 6 months of the first winter they were in Canada, they were all in basically just a pile of rocks built up on the side of sort of a hill, I guess. None of them spoke English, but they were in a community that all spoke Romanian, so they had lots of family and friends around. 6 months after they were here, they wrote to the government again asking for a better piece of land through the Dominion land grants. They got a piece of land. It was in the municipality of Happy Land, which is in the Maple Creek area. So they packed everybody up. There was, at that time, or by that time, there were 14 kids plus the mom and dad, and they all packed up in, mostly they walked, because they just had one small wagon and one ox, one horse, and one calf. And they had approximately at that time $300 cash, which was actually quite a lot back then. And they pretty much walked all the way across the rest of the province till they got to their new land grant, which was very close to the water, a little too soggy. And they built a sod house, which was terrible because it was full of snakes. So my grandma always had a fear of snakes because they grew up with them all around, and they had to sort of survive through the spring, their first spring in the land. In that area, it was mostly people that weren't Catholic, which wasn't good for them because they were very religious. They moved shortly after, bought a new piece of land, and moved to a different community, which was in Prelate, which they loved because they were close to family. And they had a church that they built called St. Peter and Paul, and my great-grandpa became one of the mayors of the town, so that made Canada a little bit better for them. But my great-grandma and my grandma never ever learned to speak English. They only spoke Romanian, refused to learn English, and they didn't really want to assimilate into Canada because they just thought it would sort of be like a Romania in Canada instead. Their community was all Romanian, so they weren't treated poorly or anything like that. They never really had to change much because everyone was the same nationality as them. When my grandma found her husband, he was from Russia, so when they got married and had children, Logan's grandma was one of those children. They still never taught their children English. My mom never learned English until she was 16. My grandma, Logan's great-grandma, never really hated Canada, but never really felt it was her home. She still sort of felt that it was just Romania in a different land. She sort of felt that people should just let her be the way she was. So she never learned English. She never read. She never wrote. And she did enjoy just living on the farm. They lived on the farm until she was in her early 80s, and then she moved into the city in Medicine Hat. But she still refused to learn how to learn any English. When we were kids, we spoke Romanian to her as well.